The supply chain supervisor had been chattering for 40 minutes before he suddenly remembered there was someone behind him. He quickly turned around and was surprised to see Lucas standing there all the time, as straight as a young tree. He said, "Sorry, Secretary Lucas. I kept you waiting for so long." Lucas said with a smile, "It's okay. Please continue." The supervisor sensed that the atmosphere in the office was strange. He said to Leo, "Mr. Leo, anyway, that's the situation. I'll go back first." Leo was sitting in the chair, calm and composed. He rested his elbows on the armrests and gently folded his fingers. He looked relaxed and at ease. He nodded to the supply chain supervisor, indicating that he could leave. After the supervisor left the office, only Leo and Lucas were left. Lucas stood there motionless. Leo put away his relaxed expression and looked at Lucas with a heavy gaze. His eyes wandered over Lucas. The temperature in the office dropped several degrees instantly, and there was a chill in the air. It was always like this. Whenever the two of them were alone, the president never had a good look on his face. Although one was standing and the other was sitting, Lucas just felt inferior to him. Leo asked, "Do you have any objections?" Lucas shook his head and said, "No objections." Leo nodded and said casually, "Young people need experience." But he still remained calm on the surface and replied, "The president is right." Leo stared at him and suddenly said, "Every time you scold me in your heart, you'll call me president. You think it's perfect, but actually it's very awkward." Lucas told a blatant lie with open eyes. "How could I? I swear I won't speak ill of you. If he speaks ill of the president again, he'll be a puppy. Woof woof." Lucas swore in his heart without any burden and stood upright. Even though he had driven for several hours in the afternoon, even though he had been standing here for 40 minutes, and even though he hadn't had a sip of water, he still stood upright, not allowing himself to bend over or show a wronged look. Leo folded his fingers, gently tapped the back of his hand with his index finger, and stared at Lucas with his deep eyes, his expression unclear. He suddenly stood up and walked to Lucas' side. Leo still didn't wear a coat in the office. He just wore a waistcoat over his usual shirt. The black waistcoat constrained his back and pulled out a slender line. Lucas knew that Leo was tall. Only when the two got close did he truly feel the sense of oppression. Leo squinted his eyes and said, "You called me crazy." Sure enough, he was still holding a grudge. There was a scrutinizing light in his narrow eyes. Leo's expression was obscure, but the two were too close, and Lucas felt a bit uncomfortable. He turned his face away and heard Leo say, "When I see you, I think of you calling me crazy, and my temples start to throb." Leo's voice was a bit sinister, with a faint trace of anger. Lucas summoned up his courage and said, "Me too. I dream of you hitting the back of my head every day, and my head throbs when I wake up in the morning." Leo withdrew his gaze, kept a straight face, and looked down at him, saying, "Are you blaming me?" Lucas explained, "I just want to say that I'm not feeling well either." Leo took a step forward and Lucas had to take a step back. After a few steps, the two reached the door. Leo stretched out his hand. Lucas leaned against the door. The cold door panel stimulated his back. He subconsciously closed his eyes and thought, is the president finally going to beat him? The next second, Leo pushed open the door and said to Lucas in a deep voice, "You can go out now." He almost fell backward to the ground, but managed to steady himself at the last moment to avoid making a fool of himself. He lowered his head and said, "Then I'll leave, Mr. Leo." After saying that, Lucas turned around and left without looking back. Leo withdrew the hand that was about to support Lucas' lower back, snorted at his back, and then closed the office door. Afterwards, Leo made several probes, but fortunately Lucas was on guard early. Unlike before, he didn't run around foolishly and suffered fewer hidden losses. The great president is playing such mind games and making things difficult for him. He really has a heart smaller than the tip of a needle. Everyone could clearly see that Lucas had a tough time during this period. The other secretaries and assistants in the president's office are all shrewd people and can immediately tell from the president's attitude. So the others cast more inquisitive looks at Lucas. Has Secretary Lucas fallen out of favor? He's only been on the job for a few days. It can't be that bad, right? But judging from Mr. Leo's attitude, he has an issue with him. Secretary Lucas is still young. Maybe he did something to upset Mr. Leo. Everyone was still watching, but Lucas could clearly feel that people's attitudes towards him had turned cold. Other departments are also particularly concerned about the situation in the president's office. Even a supervisor called Lucas over during lunch and told him not to be impetuous and to listen to Mr. Leo carefully. Even Chloe sent a message beating around the bush to ask about the situation. Lucas could only muddle through and say that nothing was wrong. Lucas himself didn't know how far Leo was going to go. Is he trying to force him to resign? Lucas was a bit angry and had the idea of resigning, but he suppressed it. He just couldn't swallow his pride. It's a matter of pride. If he resigns voluntarily, he'll lose. Moreover, Lucas dug out last month's salary notice. Looking at the figures on it, his eyes were full of reluctance. He couldn't bear to give up such a high salary. One may not strive for face, but one has to bow to the necessities of life. At the same time, Henry also heard the news that Secretary Lucas had fallen out of favor. Instead of going to Lucas, he came over to talk to Leo. I said, Mr. Leo, what's wrong with Secretary Lucas? Leo glanced at him and didn't answer. Instead, he said, are you very idle? Henry was used to Leo's rhetorical questions and ignored them. He continued, you overruled all objections and were so insistent on transferring Secretary Lucas up before. Why are you bullying him now? When Ivy was to be the department head, many people wanted to recommend their own people to be Leo's secretary. But Leo transferred an unknown young man from the administrative management department to his side. Many people didn't understand and privately investigated Lucas' background. They found that he was just an ordinary young man, and the most special thing about him was his good looks. Some people privately said that Leo was lust-driven. But Henry didn't think so. As the 8-year president's assistant of Shearway Technology and a veteran of 3 administrations, he knew that Leo had his reasons for valuing Lucas so much. But now Leo was taking his anger out on Lucas. You snatched him over and don't treat him well. What a jerk. Henry joked. Leo frowned and the air around him became cold and hard. I'm warning you, don't talk nonsense. The reason why Henry hadn't been promoted in 8 years was his loose tongue. Coincidentally, Lucas was the same way. Leo looked at Henry coldly, his eyes gloomier than the clouds on doomsday. You secretaries and assistants should have zippers on your mouths. Henry was so scared that he stepped back repeatedly and said, I won't bother you anymore. I'm leaving. Leo made a get-out quickly gesture and added, call Lucas in. Henry also made a salute gesture and said, okay, boss. Lucas was sitting at his own desk, handling work. Assistant Henry had been inside for a while. No one knew what he was talking about with Leo. If only he were half as lively as Assistant Henry. Then he could generously pat the president on the shoulder and say, dude, stop beating around the bush and give me a straight answer. Lucas was daydreaming in his mind when suddenly Henry walked out and shouted at him, Secretary Lucas, it's your turn. Lucas immediately stood up and said, okay, thank you, Assistant Henry. Henry said, come on, and Lucas smiled at him before walking into Leo's office. Leo was still backed by the urban backdrop of high-rise buildings. The worldly prosperity seemed to rest on his shoulders, making him look like the king of the city. When he saw Lucas come in, he pointed to a stack of documents in front and said, distribute these documents. Okay, Mr. Leo. Lucas stepped forward, picked up those documents, and was ready to get to work. Do it in person. Lucas stopped because of Leo's words. He turned his head and looked at Leo only to find that Leo had been staring at him. At this moment, their eyes met. Leo didn't dodge, and his gaze became even more direct. Lucas found that he couldn't understand the meaning of the president's eyes, whether they were obscure or direct. Previously, Leo clearly said that things like distributing documents could be left to others. There was no need for him to do it himself every time. When he sent documents to the administrative department, Leo was even unhappy. But now he was asked to do it in person. Was this another new way to torture him? Aren't you going yet? Leo raised his eyebrows. Lucas nodded and left with the documents in his arms. Lucas walked to his desk and sorted the documents by department. Sure enough, there was one that needed to be sent to the administrative department. Lucas slowed down his work pace a bit. Was he overthinking? Lucas sorted the documents and delivered them department by department. Everyone was very polite to him, but they wondered in their hearts. Usually, such documents were sent via OA system and they were asked to pick them up by themselves. Why did Lucas come here in person? The president was really dissatisfied with this new secretary. There were a few more gossips. Lucas finally arrived at the door of the administrative department. Holding the documents, he felt a little uneasy. He didn't know if Nora still blamed him, nor did he know if he should go in. He thought of Leo. Leo once criticized him. Go to the administrative department, Les, or you won't even know how you die. Even a fool should understand what the president meant. Lucas composed himself and knocked on the glass door of the administrative department. That day, Lucas still went to the administrative department. Unexpectedly, it brought him trouble. He was complained about. Someone directly went to the Human Resources Department to complain that his work attitude was not serious. After entering the president's office, he didn't take the lower-level departments seriously and made mistakes several times. Generally, if someone has opinions on a person's work, they will report it to his superior. But the complainant didn't do so. Instead, he bypassed the president's office and directly reported it to the HR department. The Human Resources Department is indeed responsible for employees' assessment and promotion. In this regard, there is nothing wrong. If the complaint is true, points will definitely be deducted from this year's assessment. If it happens several times, he will lose his job. What's more intriguing is that the HR department didn't suppress this matter out of respect for the president. Instead, they came directly to the floor of the president's office to find Lucas and asked loudly what was going on. Moreover, it was the HR supervisor who came in person. The supervisor of HR is Ivy, a senior of Lucas and the previous secretary of the president. Ivy wore three-quarter dress pants, a loose knitted sweater, and flat shoes as she returned to the former office floor. Her attire was simple yet efficient, only revealing a bit of femininity through the jewelry on her neck and wrists. Ivy walked up to Lucas, raised her red lips, and said to him with a smile, Secretary Lucas, someone has complained that you've made mistakes with the president's office documents several times. I'm here to ask what exactly happened. While flipping through the records, she said, This complaint is from the Administrative Management Department. Can you explain the specific situation? As soon as Lucas saw Ivy, he remembered her stack of work experience notes, which clearly stated the hobbies of each cooperative client and the ways to deal with them. Lucas not only put the key points in his phone's memo, but was also once forced by Leo to copy them by hand. He still has a psychological shadow to this day. He thought that Ivy didn't even want to come to him privately to save him some face, but instead did it so openly in front of everyone. So Lucas also put on a business-like face and seriously replied, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I haven't made any mistakes in my work. Ivy listened without changing her expression and just continued. The Administrative Management Department said you made 2 mistakes. The first time, the documents distributed to them were a few pages short. The second time, you mixed up the documents of other departments and gave them to them. The staff handled problems with the wrong data, causing a series of consequences. The Administrative Management Department had to arrange personnel to correct the mistakes and reorganize, which brought them a lot of trouble. Lucas insisted on his statement, impossible. I couldn't have made such a low-level mistake. The two were having the above conversation in front of the president's office. Not far away at the workstations, many people were paying attention. Strictly speaking, this is a very small matter. What if a few documents were mixed up? Not to mention that the administrative department is originally in charge of handling various miscellaneous affairs of the company. No one has ever made a fuss about such things before. Trying to impeach a secretary for a mistake of a few pieces of paper is simply a joke. Now that this joke has become a reality, it can only mean one thing. Secretary Lucas has no one to protect him. Lucas stood there looking into Ivy's eyes as if he could hear the discussions in the public office area. Secretary Lucas has only been in office for 2 months and he's already been resented. How terrible. The Administrative Management Department's hand has reached here. In my opinion, if Mr. Leo didn't give his tacit approval, would others dare to touch the people in the president's office? In the final analysis, Secretary Lucas must have offended Mr. Leo. Poor thing. He's only been here for 2 months and he's going to be driven away. Lucas subconsciously looked outside. In fact, no one was talking. Everyone at their workstations was immersed in their own work and the whole floor was very quiet. Seeing his expression, Ivy just smiled and said, So, what should you do? You have to prove that you didn't make a mistake. Lucas calmly said, It's really unreasonable to have to prove your innocence when misfortune befalls you out of the blue. Ivy said, There are a lot of complaints from the administrative department. Everyone has their own opinions on this matter. She told Lucas the truth. In the end, it will probably end up unresolved, but you definitely won't be considered for the outstanding employee this year. Not everyone can be an outstanding employee. However, if Lucas doesn't clarify the matter, it will become a permanent topic of conversation and will be brought up from time to time. Lucas remained silent. Silence is the Cambridge tonight. Just then, the door of the president's office opened. Leo appeared at the door with a straight face like an unhappy lion, looking at the two of them imposingly and saying, "Can you two speak any louder?" Lucas and Ivy exchanged a knowing look. Mr. Leo's sarcastic rhetorical questions are never absent. Leo asked the two of them to enter the office. He sat down on the sofa, crossed his legs, and looked up at Ivy, saying, "It seems that you, the supervisor, are very idle. You come to my door and make a big fuss over a few pieces of paper." Ivy was obviously used to Leo's attitude and said, "It's not that I want to make a big fuss. Since someone has filed a complaint with me, I have to give them an explanation." Leo looked at his two successive secretaries. There was a thick fog gathering between his profound eyebrows and everything was unclear. He said, "Then call the supervisor of the administrative department over." Lucas was surprised. If the supervisor is called over for a face-to-face confrontation, the situation will be different. Soon, the supervisor of the administrative management department arrived at the president's office. The supervisor of the administrative management department was well versed in the ways of dealing with people and offended no one. As soon as he came in, he said, "I've already investigated clearly. This matter was done by an employee in our department. She worked overtime for a few days because of Secretary Lucas' mistake and was resentful." With just one sentence, he clarified the whole story and at the same time distanced himself from it. As the supervisor, he was unaware of it before, and it was all done by that employee on her own initiative. "It's not a big problem," the supervisor defined the matter. He looked at Lucas and said, "Secretary Lucas just needs to be more careful next time." The supervisor wanted to smooth things over, but Lucas didn't agree. He wasn't going to take the blame, so he asked the supervisor of the administrative management department, "Is it Nora? The one who complained about him?" The supervisor was stunned for a moment, and Lucas knew he had guessed right. In fact, there was no need to guess at all. Lucas looked at the two supervisors beside him and then at Leo. Leo always sat on the sofa like an audience watching the performance of several people, looking a bit absent-minded. But beneath his seemingly relaxed posture, his deep eyes and tightly pursed lips all concealed a sense of scrutiny and inquiry. He was weighing whether this show needed to go on. He seemed to be an audience, but in fact, he was the controller. The power of life and death over the stage was in his hands. Lucas thought that he had to present a wonderful performance for the president. So Lucas said, "I can prove that I didn't make a mistake." The two supervisors looked at him. Lucas took out his phone and said methodically, "I can only prove my innocence in a clumsy way." That day when he distributed the documents, he recorded the whole process. The high-definition camera on the phone captured the process of him checking page by page, and even the page numbers of the papers were clearly photographed. Lucas did such a small thing as distributing materials seriously, ensuring that all 14 departments of Shearway Technology could accurately receive this document from the president's office. He put each document into a bag and finally sealed it. Lucas showed the video to Ivy and the supervisor of the administrative department and said, "I used a different seal this time. The unique seal cannot be faked." Lucas said slowly, "I think the seal should still be on the document bag distributed to the administrative department." The existence of the video and the seal indicates that the documents Lucas delivered were correct and the mistake occurred after the document bag was opened and the papers inside were taken out. "I couldn't prove it the first time, so I was more cautious the second time." Lucas was very calm. Since the president had given him a hint, it would be stupid of him not to be on guard. "I handed the documents to Chloe both times. It remains to be investigated whether it was Chloe or Nora who secretly replaced the documents and framed Lucas, but Lucas didn't think it was Nora. After all, that girl was too straightforward and even showed her dislike for him. "I've finished speaking." Lucas made a concluding statement. The supervisor of the administrative department didn't look good. He wiped the sweat off his face and said, "I didn't expect it to be like this. I wrongly blamed you, Secretary Lucas." He still wanted to downplay the matter. It wasn't a big deal originally. "It was my fault for not managing my subordinates well. I'll go back and give them a good scolding." Leo suddenly spoke up and asked, "Why were there documents from other departments mixed in?" Lucas had sorted the documents and distributed them to the 14 departments respectively, but somehow those documents ended up back in the administrative department, so Chloe could get hold of them and stuff them into their document bags. The supervisor wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, because our department often helps other departments handle some affairs. Leo nodded and said the implied meaning, other departments just dump the things they don't want to do on you. Everyone in the company knew that the administrative department was like a recycling bin for miscellaneous tasks. All the tasks that couldn't generate performance were dumped on the administrative department. The supervisor didn't dare to say a word. Leo said, if a department exists solely to handle the tasks that should be done by other departments, then there's no need for the administrative department to exist. Leo said word by word, the company doesn't need a department that cleans up other people's messes. The supervisor of the administrative department was stunned. Lucas was also taken aback and looked at Leo. Leo actually said such a thing. Obviously, the president wasn't joking. He sat calmly on the sofa, at least appearing calm on the surface, but there was reproach in his eyes as he looked at the supervisor of the administrative department. In the spacious and bright office, a complex and anxious atmosphere pervaded, and the only calm one was Leo, who was in control of everything. He slowly said, the constant circulation of documents within the company is itself a waste of resources and manpower. The existence of the administrative department will also encourage the slackness of other departments. It's better to break it up and assign the staff to more useful places. The supervisor of the administrative department was dumbfounded. Leo turned to Ivy and asked, can you arrange the staff on your side? Ivy replied confidently, yes, we can submit a transition plan to you for review soon. During the conversation between the two, they actually started discussing how to distribute the existing employees of the administrative department to other places. Lucas beside them immediately understood. Originally, it was just a small matter of delivering documents. Why was it magnified infinitely? It wasn't enough to alert the department supervisor, and even the HR was involved, and it even reached the president. Leo was just waiting for an opportunity. He had the plan to dissolve the administrative department for a long time. For the company, the administrative department was like a redundant rust on a huge machine. Leo needed someone to hand him a knife to remove the rust. Lucas was very honored to be the one who handed the knife. From when did it start? Probably since Lucas first went to the administrative department, Leo had started thinking about it. Lucas glanced at Ivy. This HR, who used to be a secretary, didn't come here today to investigate his matter, but to cooperate with the president. Sure enough, Leo said to Ivy, a meeting needs to be held to discuss this matter. Ivy nodded and said, understood, Mr. Leo. I'll initiate this meeting. The supervisor of the administrative department was petrified. He couldn't understand how his department was about to disappear after just a few words. It took him a while to figure it out. Lucas would be on guard and take out his phone to record a video. It was just like fishing law enforcement, waiting for the people in the administrative department to show their flaws. I'm afraid all this was instigated by Mr. Leo. He is determined to dissolve their department. People outside said that Secretary Lucas had offended the president. They were blind. If Mr. Leo didn't trust Secretary Lucas, would he let him do this? Secretary Lucas is a knife in Mr. Leo's hand. Lucas was thinking that the matter of his being slandered would probably be written about in great detail and presented at the meeting as evidence of the administrative department's corruption and uselessness. The president never focused on just a few pieces of paper from beginning to end. All he saw was the big picture. One move leads to 3 responses. This is what a businessman is like. Lucas cautiously looked at Leo. Just now he thought Leo was like a lion, lazy yet majestic, observing everything like a dormant king. Now he thought Leo was like a falcon, fierce and relentless. Once he took action, he would never miss. Leo turned his head and caught Lucas's gaze. It's time for a meeting, Secretary Lucas. Go and make preparations. This was the calmest thing Leo had said to him in the past few days. The deep voice carrying the order reached Lucas's ears. Lucas looked at Leo's deep-set eyes and eyebrows, and his heart skipped a few beats uncontrollably. The fate of the administrative department was decided in just a few conversations. The supervisor of the administrative department knew that what the president had decided couldn't be changed. There was no way to reverse the situation, and his face turned ashen. Having played the role of a peacemaker for too long, he had lost the courage a supervisor should have. Ivy quickly grasped the president's intention and prepared to go back to draft a transition plan. With a feasible plan, there would be less opposition. Lucas saw the 2 supervisors out of the office. The administrative supervisor was in a daze and left without saying goodbye. Ivy was not in a hurry to leave and still wanted to talk to Lucas. The adjacent office area still listened attentively without showing it. But Lucas was in a different state of mind and let them pry openly. Ivy said, "Mr. Leo has long wanted to downsize the administrative department." Lucas nodded. Leo's father, Alexander, came from a state-owned enterprise, so the organizational structure was inevitably a bit complicated. Now that flat management is in vogue, it's understandable that Leo had such an idea. "You did a great job today. I didn't expect it to go so smoothly before I came." Ivy praised Lucas. Lucas smiled but didn't say a word. Even if he hadn't done those things in the administrative department, Leo could still find a breakthrough. It's just that with his involvement, things developed more rapidly. Leo had long seen the mire in the administrative department. He regarded Lucas as a stone and threw it into the pond with the purpose of stirring up the muddy water. Lucas didn't mind being Leo's tool this time. Instead, he deeply admired Leo. Just like in the office just now, his heart was pounding because he thought Leo was very powerful. At that moment, Lucas wanted to be Leo's sword willingly. Lucas finally understood why good leaders are followed. It's because everyone knows that following a capable boss means having a future and getting rewards. Ivy walked into the elevator, and Lucas waved to her outside. Ivy suddenly said, "Let me tell you two secrets. One is that when you were transferred to be Mr. Leo's secretary and the notice was announced, someone in the administrative department reported that you were unqualified for the position, but they couldn't give a reason. Mr. Leo suppressed it. Now I think it might still be that, Chloe." Now Lucas didn't have much of a reaction when he heard this. Then Ivy told him the second secret. "Actually, Mr. Leo only talks in a sarcastic way in front of his own people." After she said this, the elevator door closed. Does one have to be grateful for such a reserved and fussy personality? Lucas returned to the president's office. Leo stood up from the sofa and paced around restlessly, looking preoccupied and unable to sit still. Lucas thought he was thinking about the department adjustment and said, "Mr. Leo, do you have any other instructions?" Leo said with a gloomy face, "There were too many people here just now. It made me uncomfortable. Find someone to do the cleaning." So it was his fussy and obsessive-compulsive disorder acting up. Leo turned his head and stared at Lucas with his dark eyes. "You're scolding me in your heart. Lucas, I'm wronged. Is calling someone fussy and obsessive-compulsive scolding? This is the truth. I was thinking in my heart that you look very handsome today. This was also the truth. Just now in the office, Leo was extremely handsome when he announced the dissolution of the administrative department." Leo sneered and looked at Lucas coldly, saying, "Young man, you're so excited about such a small thing." Lucas smiled. These days, Lucas' eyes were dull and gray. Now the clouds had cleared and the rain had stopped. His eyes were clear and bright, as lively as a stream stone washed by water. Leo looked at him and thought, "This face is so beautiful, but he can't hide his feelings at all." Lucas, on the other hand, was thinking the president shouldn't be angry with him anymore, right? He wasn't sure. He stared at Leo while smiling. Leo raised his eyebrows. "Why aren't you going to find someone to do the cleaning?" Lucas immediately stood up straight and replied in a strong voice, "Yes, Mr. Leo." He opened the door and walked out to call the cleaners. Leo looked at Lucas' brisk back and murmured vaguely, "Thank you for your hard work." After he said that, he raised his hand to touch his lips and frowned, thinking that this wasn't his style. Forget it, anyway, he didn't hear it. Leo wasn't joking. The restructuring of the administrative department will start immediately. Sure enough, it was Chloe who framed Lucas. Hearing the news of the department's dissolution, Chloe immediately panicked and defended herself, saying that she just wanted everyone to dislike Lucas. She didn't expect Nora to file a complaint. Nora was confused and said that there was nothing wrong with her filing a complaint. It was her legitimate right as an employee. The supervisor got a headache looking at the two of them and slapped the table, telling them to stop arguing. What's the use of saying these things now? The president is determined to restructure the department. Even without them, he would start from other aspects. It's just that they happened to fall into Lucas' hands this time, which accelerated the process. Who spread the rumor that Secretary Lucas has fallen out of favor? Spreading such nonsense. Chloe had her bonus deducted and was given an internal disciplinary action in the company. There was no hope of her getting a promotion in the future. Moreover, since the company was undergoing a departmental restructuring, it was obvious that she wouldn't be assigned to a good position. So she voluntarily resigned. Lucas didn't care about these trivial matters. Recently, due to the company's structural adjustment, Leo was busy and Lucas was also busy along with him. Fortunately, Leo didn't have the time to pick on him anymore. Lucas' days became a lot easier. It was only when he was busy that he remembered that he hadn't seen Benjamin for many days. Sorry, Benjamin. So many things have happened during this period and I haven't accompanied you properly. Lucas called Benjamin. Benjamin didn't blame him. Instead, he comforted Lucas and said, "You're so busy. I don't blame you. Didn't you say that your boss's attitude towards you has improved recently? You should seize the opportunity to show your worth." Lucas still felt guilty and said, "I'll come over to accompany you today." Benjamin said, "No need. Besides, I'm also busy. I have to work overtime to conduct experiments tonight." Lucas said disappointedly, "Well, then let's make another appointment some other time." Benjamin said, "Okay. I'll call you when I'm free. Don't be in a hurry. Take your time." Lucas hung up the phone and stared blankly at it. Why is Benjamin so considerate recently? In the past, when encountering such a situation, he would definitely complain a few words. Their relationship is like a long-distance relationship. Lucas thought that he couldn't go on like this anymore. He must finish his work ahead of schedule today, go to see Benjamin at night, and have a good talk with Benjamin after he finished the experiment. Lucas made up his mind. He was very efficient today. As soon as it was time to get off work, he stared longingly at the door of the president's office, hoping that Leo would leave on time. When Leo came out, his eyes directly met Lucas. Lucas quickly lowered his head. Leo said coldly, "If you keep looking, you'll work overtime for 2 hours today." Fortunately, although Leo said so, he didn't take actual action. He glanced at the top of Lucas' head and strode towards the elevator. Lucas murmured quietly in his heart that Mr. Leo's future wife must be very miserable. Her husband is a workaholic and never stays at home. After leaving the company, Lucas first went to the supermarket to buy some food that Benjamin liked and then called Benjamin. Benjamin didn't answer the phone. Lucas thought he was still in the laboratory. After thinking about it, he decided to wait at the new house Benjamin rented. Benjamin never liked Lucas to come to the school to find him. Maybe he was afraid of being joked about by the students. Lucas carried the things and walked in the autumn wind, feeling refreshed. Recently, he has been full of enthusiasm and has many exciting ideas in his heart. Which man doesn't want to be as successful in his career and in control of the situation as Leo? Maybe he can't reach Leo's level, but he should be able to reach Ivy's position. The incident in the administrative department made him see the possibility of his career. How could he not be excited? He had a lot to say and wanted to share it with someone. He thought Benjamin would definitely understand him. After all, Benjamin was also a man with pursuits. Otherwise, he wouldn't have worked so hard on the experiment. Lucas walked to the downstairs of Benjamin's rented house, looked up, and found that the familiar window was not lit. Lucas went upstairs to the door and knocked, and as expected, there was no one. He entered the password in the combination lock on the door, only to find that the password was incorrect. Benjamin had changed the door password. Lucas thought for a moment and placed his thumb on the fingerprint area. He had come here alone last time, so it should be okay this time, right? Fortunately, when he came last time, Lucas had registered his fingerprint, and the door opened with a click. Lucas turned on the light and found that the house had been completely tidied up. Almost all the things had been moved in, and there were signs of life. Lucas felt a twinge of guilt in his heart. He hadn't helped Benjamin move. He put the things in his hand into the refrigerator and found that not only was the refrigerator plugged in, but there were also quite a few fresh ingredients inside. Benjamin can't cook. He used to eat in the cafeteria. Why did he buy so many vegetables? Lucas didn't think much about it and walked around the house. The house was not only tidied up, but also decorated with many ornaments. There were many fashionable handicrafts placed in every corner. For example, that strange mermaid sculpture from last time was still placed on the bedside table. Lucas stared at the double bed in the bedroom and fell into deep thought. He stood there blankly for a while. Suddenly, his phone vibrated, and he received a message from Benjamin. Don't come. I'm busy today. Be good. I'll come to you later. 2 hours later, Benjamin replied, telling him not to come. Lucas didn't reply anymore. Instead, he walked to the living room and sat down on the sofa. The empty room was eerily quiet. About half an hour later, Lucas, with his sharp ears, heard the sound of the elevator running outside the door. His heart skipped a beat. He got up and turned off the light, and the whole house instantly plunged into darkness. It was quiet and dark, and only the sound of footsteps outside the door came bit by bit, mixed with the sound of talking. The door opened. The person at the door didn't rush to turn on the light, but joked, "What's the rush? There's still a whole night." This was Benjamin's voice. Then another voice sounded, delicate and soft. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." Benjamin said, "There's no way. I have to do the experiment." There was a sweet and coquettish tone in the other voice. "I'll go and tell my dad to give your project an excellent evaluation directly. Don't do the experiment anymore. Spend more time with me. Don't be naughty." There was a smile in Benjamin's voice, along with a sense of contentment. Then the two met in the darkness. The other person hung on Benjamin, and Benjamin lowered his head. The dark shadows were stuck together intimately, and the disgusting sound of wetness irritated the eardrums. A blinding light shone on the two of them. The flash kept flashing, recording the scene at the door. Benjamin was startled and shouted loudly, "Turn on the light." It was still a smart home. The big lamp in the living room came on, and everything was exposed. Benjamin was holding a boy at the entrance, while Lucas was sitting on the sofa holding up his phone, and the phone's camera was pointing directly at the two at the door. Thanks to today's high tech, even in the dark with the flash, the phone could still take very clear pictures. For a moment, none of the three people moved. Lucas couldn't tell what he was feeling now. At first, he was confused, and then he was angry. He admired himself for still having the mind to take pictures of the two gay men with his phone in this situation. After the light came on, he could see clearly that the boy who came in with Benjamin had red lips and white teeth, a delicate face, and looked very young. Lucas pointed at Benjamin in disbelief and said, "You're actually having an affair with a minor?" The young boy was startled by Lucas' tone. His eyes immediately welled up with tears, and he softly said, "I'm not a minor." After a brief moment of confusion and panic, Benjamin quickly composed himself and said to Lucas, "Why did you come without saying a word?" Lucas sneered, "If I had said something, I wouldn't have witnessed this wonderful show, would I?" Benjamin reached out his hand towards him and said, "What did you take just now? Give it to me." Naturally, Lucas wouldn't give his phone to him. Instead, he said, "Don't you have anything to explain?" Benjamin ran his hand through his hair and said, "I didn't want things to turn out so ugly. I originally planned to talk it out with you, but you've been so busy lately." Lucas looked at him in disbelief and said, "Are you blaming me for being busy?" The young pretty boy stepped forward and stood in front of Benjamin. Looking on the verge of tears, he said to Lucas, "Don't be so fierce." Lucas looked at him as if he were an alien and told him, "Benjamin has a boyfriend, yet he's involved with you." The young man whispered, "I know." Lucas thought to himself, so they're both willing participants. What a perfect match. If these two are a perfect match, then what am I? It seemed that this kid had helped Benjamin move, and the handicrafts in the house that didn't match Benjamin's style were probably his too. Lucas felt as if his face had been slapped hard. He couldn't stand staying in this disgusting house for another moment. He clutched his phone and walked away. Benjamin reached out to grab him and said, "The phone." Even at this point, this guy only cared about the phone. Lucas shook off Benjamin's hand and rushed out of the room. Benjamin wanted to chase after him, but at this time, Thomas grabbed him and whispered, "Don't chase." Lucas ran out of Benjamin's rental house and all the way back to his own home. He didn't dare to stop for a moment on the way. If he did, he'd explode with anger. He was good looking, and people always thought he was a playboy. He didn't have his first relationship until he was 24, and yet he was cheated on. Lucas cursed Benjamin in his heart with the most vicious words. At first, when Benjamin showed his affection to him, he thought that as a teacher, Benjamin should have good character, so he agreed to Benjamin's request to start dating. Unexpectedly, after only 4 months, Benjamin had an affair with someone else behind his back. That young man looked quite young. Even if he wasn't a minor, he was at least a student. Although Lucas had little dating experience, he was good looking. Previously, it was always others who chased after him. Today, being cheated on, he didn't feel sad but was only filled with raging anger. A handsome man's self-esteem cannot be violated. Lucas ran home, threw himself on the bed, and pounded his pillow hard. After venting his anger, he sat up and stared at his phone. To be honest, it was pitch black at that time. He only focused on pressing the phone. The flash was too brief for him to see clearly what the two of them were doing, but from the sounds, he knew exactly what they were up to. Lucas held his phone but didn't want to look at the photos in it at all. However, he wanted to know the truth even if it was painful. He endured the nausea, looked around, saw Mr. Leo's doll sitting upright beside him, and reached out to grab it and hold it in his arms. He didn't know why, but he thought Mr. Leo's doll could ward off evil spirits. Holding the doll, Lucas squinted his eyes like someone watching a horror movie and clicked on the photo album. Ugh! He really almost vomited. In the photo, the two of them were kissing. Benjamin's hands were in inappropriate places, and the young man's legs were wrapped around Benjamin's waist. Lucas wanted to smash his phone, but then he thought better of it. He was reluctant to do so. Why should he ruin his phone because of a scumbag? Moreover, there was evidence of the crime in it. He threw the phone aside, stopped looking at the photos, and hugged Mr. Leo's doll, lost in thought. He heard the conversation between the two. The young man said that his father could make Benjamin's project win an excellent evaluation, which meant that his family must be well off. For someone like him to be the other man, not to mention Benjamin, that scumbag who was having an affair with two people at the same time. The more Lucas thought about it, the angrier he got. He shouted and rolled on the bed with the Mr. Leo doll in his arms. Lucas hardly slept all night. The next day, he went to work with a straight face. Benjamin didn't even contact him all night. Was he so heartless that he didn't even bother to pretend anymore? Lucas arrived at the company early and inspected Leo's office to make sure it was clean. It's because their president has a cleanliness fetish. After finishing his preparatory work, he returned to his own seat. When Leo came to the office, he saw that Lucas didn't have a smile on his face as usual. Instead, he was drooping his eyes and staring blankly at the floor in front of him. Leo cleared his throat. Lucas immediately jumped up from his seat and shouted, "Good morning, Mr. Leo." Leo glanced at him and asked, "Did you rob a bank last night?" Lucas, "No, Mr. Leo. I didn't sleep well last night. The company is not responsible for solving employees' sleep problems." Leo walked past Lucas and entered the office. Lucas didn't smile all day. He still handled things efficiently, but he lost his kind attitude. He was cold and expressionless. Everyone thought he had another argument with the president. But since the incident in the administrative department, no one questioned Lucas' position with the president anymore. When they saw him like this, they just showed some concern and didn't dare to gossip too much. Maybe the president has another plan and asked Secretary Lucas to create a smokescreen. Henry was so scared that he grabbed Leo and asked, "Did you put a curse on Secretary Lucas? Why does he have the same expression as you? It's so scary." As Henry spoke, he used his fingers to pull the corners of his eyes upwards, making a squinting face. Leo was annoyed with him and said, "What does it have to do with me? Maybe it's just a hormonal imbalance." After all, he had insomnia. Henry stroked his chin and said in a pedantic tone, "I think he's having a broken heart. Who looks like someone owes them 30 million when they're having a broken heart? Isn't one supposed to be distraught after a breakup?" Lucas doesn't look sad. His eyes are full of murderous intent. Leo was too lazy to talk to Henry and didn't believe what he said. "Really?" Henry leaned closer to Leo and said, "I think Secretary Lucas's strange behavior today is related to love. His boyfriend is a top student and is said to be doing well at S-City University." Leo didn't want to hear the gossips about the employees at all and said, "Is the company paying you just to chat during work hours?" Henry shrugged and shut up. After scolding Henry, Leo was about to continue dealing with official business. He paused and added, "Don't harass Lucas. No matter what the reason is, he seems to be in a bad mood. Don't disturb him." In fact, no one bothered Lucas. Even Benjamin didn't look for him. Besides being angry, Lucas began to feel confused. He definitely wouldn't forgive Benjamin, but were they just going to break up like this without any clarification? It's too easy on that scumbag. Lucas wanted to send the photos on his phone to the email of S-City University but hesitated because it would also involve himself and make things look bad. Moreover, strictly speaking, Benjamin had an affair rather than an extramarital affair. Since they weren't married, the moral condemnation Benjamin would receive was limited. Just when Lucas was hesitating, Benjamin finally contacted him. Benjamin sent a message, "Let's have a talk." Lucas originally wanted to reply that they had nothing to talk about, but then he thought he should have a closure. So he went to the appointed place aggressively. Benjamin still had some sense of propriety and set the meeting place in a private room. He also ordered a pot of tea, probably afraid of being criticized for not spending money. Naturally, Lucas wouldn't drink the tea. He sat across with pursed lips, exercising great self-restraint and patience. The reason he was sitting here was that he wanted an apology. But the first thing Benjamin said was, "Let's break up." Lucas was furious. This scumbag actually brought up the breakup first, making it seem like he was the one being dumped. There was a blaze of anger in Lucas' beautiful eyes, brighter than the stars at night. His cheeks were flushed with rage, and his well-shaped lips were tightly pursed. It had to be said that even when angry, good-looking people still looked good. Benjamin felt a twinge of regret in his heart. If only Lucas had listened to him and not gone to find him that day. Lucas didn't know that this scumbag was still coveting him at this moment. He cursed, "How dare you even mention breaking up? Do you still think we have a relationship after what happened?" Benjamin said, "Calm down." Lucas couldn't calm down, but he also knew that being too agitated would make him lose control. He said, "Go ahead." Lucas was waiting for Benjamin to apologize, but Benjamin said, "I didn't do it on purpose. It was Thomas who kept pestering me." "Oh, so that boy was called Thomas. I told him from the start that I had a boyfriend, but he just wouldn't give up." Benjamin said, a look of distress on his face. "I can't afford to offend his father, and he often comes to the school. No wonder he didn't let him go to school. It turned out he had another one there." Lucas was enraged and said, "Do you still have the nerve to talk about how you got together?" Benjamin thought that Lucas had learned badly from his boss and only knew how to ask rhetorical questions. Benjamin asked blankly, "Then what do you want me to say?" Lucas' anger had reached its peak. This scumbag didn't have the slightest sense of apologizing from beginning to end. Benjamin poured a cup of tea for Lucas and said, "I'm also helpless." He pushed the teacup in front of Lucas. "I know you can't accept it. Let's have a last peaceful cup of tea. By the way, give me your phone and delete those photos." After all, it was because he had something on him. Lucas was furious again. He has always been polite and gentle in front of Benjamin because he works in administration and is good at taking care of others. Moreover, he doesn't want people to think that he has a temper just because he is good-looking. This doesn't mean he is easy to bully. Lucas suddenly stood up, grabbed Benjamin by the collar, pulled him over, and said fiercely, "How dare you order me? If you talk nonsense again, I'll smash your head." Benjamin has always lived and worked on campus. The environment he is in can at least maintain a superficial elegance. Lucas has always been gentle in front of him. He has never seen the side of Lucas when he says harsh words. So he thought that even if Lucas was discovered, he could just talk to him and Lucas would obediently follow his words. Benjamin was stunned as if he didn't recognize the Lucas in front of him. Lucas let go of him and threw him into the chair. Benjamin fell heavily on the chair, looking a bit embarrassed. Lucas looked down at Benjamin with contempt in his eyes. Trash. Now he can understand Leo's cleanliness. It's really disgusting from head to toe when touching dirty things. After saying that, he opened the door of the private room and walked out without looking back. Lucas definitely won't contact Benjamin again. They haven't known each other for long, and the gift giving was just out of courtesy. There is nothing to settle. Lucas packed up the things related to Benjamin and threw them into the trash can and then blocked all his contact information. After thinking about it, he still felt a bit unwilling. He turned on the computer, searched for the public email of S-City University, sent an email to the mailbox to report the teacher Benjamin's lifestyle problems, and attached the evidence at the end. He would be too embarrassed if it got on the internet, so he could only send it to the mailbox. Lucas just wanted to vent his anger. He didn't expect much from this email. In the adult world, people generally don't care about others' affairs. At most, it will just add a few more topics for after-dinner chats. Lucas decided to let it go after doing all these things. Let the scumbags torment each other. He won't accompany them anymore. He said goodbye to the past mentally, but his body didn't. It's not that he couldn't forget the old relationship and felt heart ache or chest tightness. It's just that he pulled Benjamin too hard that day and sprained his own wrist. He put a plaster on his wrist. Lucas has very white hands, long and slender fingers, plump fingertips, and round and tidy nails. Anyway, they match his appearance very well. So the plaster on his wrist and back of the hand is particularly obvious. It hurt a bit at first, but the next day it was fine as long as he didn't touch it. Lucas didn't take it seriously. Every person who passed by him would ask about his hand when they saw it. Lucas smiled and made up an excuse, saying that he accidentally twisted it at home. Others didn't care either. Anyway, it was really great that Secretary Lucas no longer had an icy face and the smile was back on his face. It was Leo who saw his hand and frowned, saying, "Apply some medicine." Lucas was startled. At first, he was feeling touched that the capitalist still had a bit of conscience and knew how to show concern for his subordinates. Then he heard Leo say, "It's an eyesore." Lucas paused for a moment and said with a big smile, "Okay, I'll apply the medicine. Thank you, President, for your concern." After saying that, he finished his work and walked out. Leo stared at the office door. He called him President again. Lucas followed Leo's instructions and bought a tube of medicine. He applied it on the back of his hand and the swelling soon subsided. His skin returned to being fair, smooth, and delicate, leaving no trace at all. Lucas thought everything was back on track. He wanted to devote all his energy to his career. After all, he was still on probation. He should work hard and not think about love. Just then, an unknown number called him. "Hello, I'm Thomas. Let's find a place to have a chat." It took Lucas a while to find the name Thomas in his memory. To be honest, he didn't have a good impression of this kid. He looked so delicate and innocent like a white lotus. Benjamin said that Thomas had made advances on him. Lucas didn't know how much of it he could believe. He also didn't know the purpose of Thomas's call. But Lucas thought that Thomas was young and might have been deceived by Benjamin. So he didn't hang up directly. Instead, he said, "Just say what you want on the phone. There's no need to meet." Thomas pondered for a moment and said, "All right. I've been meaning to call you for a long time, but I've been comforting Teacher Benjamin these days." Thomas's voice was soft and a bit nasal. It sounded cute and obedient, but the tone of his speech was somehow a bit overbearing. He wasn't as delicate as he was the last time they met. Lucas caught the key point. "Teacher Benjamin?" His voice went up an octave. "Are you really his student?" "Scumbag. Making a move on his student." Thomas quickly said, "No, I'm 22 years old. I studied at a university abroad and just came back after graduation. I call Teacher Benjamin that out of habit. He's only 2 years younger than me." While Lucas was shocked, he also realized that Thomas's pitiful and weak appearance that day was probably an act. In this case, Benjamin didn't lie. This Thomas knows there's a third party but still gets involved. There's nothing more to say. Lucas wanted to hang up the phone. As if Thomas knew what he was thinking, he said, "Wait a minute. Don't you want to ask how Teacher Benjamin is?" The words Teacher Benjamin were so harsh and nauseating. Lucas said impatiently, "It doesn't matter to me even if he's dead. Don't expect me to burn paper money for him. Thanks to Mr. Leo." Under Mr. Leo's influence, his ability to speak harshly has improved. Thomas's tone was accusatory as he said, "Teacher Benjamin has been very depressed recently." Lucas was stunned for a moment and then burst into laughter. Now he's acting like a lovesick playboy? He laughed so hard that he couldn't catch his breath and said, "Tell him to stop acting. No one is watching except you." Thomas said, "Teacher Benjamin doesn't let me come to you. At least Benjamin still has a sense of shame. In that case, don't bother me anymore." Lucas was almost out of patience. "There's one more thing." Thomas quickly interrupted and said, "Don't play dirty tricks behind my back. It's useless." Lucas didn't understand what dirty tricks he was talking about. Thomas said, "My father is the president of S City University." From Thomas's proud tone, Lucas instantly understood what he meant. The email Lucas sent to S City University was probably intercepted by Thomas using his privilege. No wonder the house Benjamin rented was so big. No wonder Benjamin suddenly became so generous. Turns out he's found a powerful backer. Projects and titles are within his reach. With a bright future ahead, he's naturally getting arrogant. Lucas closed his eyes. Now he could understand how Leo felt when he said his temples were throbbing. On the other end of the phone, Thomas was still saying, "Anyway, stop causing trouble and stop pestering." Without waiting for him to finish speaking, Lucas hung up the phone and blocked the incoming number. Thomas said he was 22 years old, but both his appearance and his actions were like a child's. His tone of speaking was like a child snatching candy. Since he liked it so much, Let him snatch it. Taking trash as a treasure, I don't care. Night fell and the city lights came on. The bustling city had a unique charm at night. The towering skyscrapers flashed neon lights, as if winking, reminding the night owls in the city that it was time for fun or rest. But in big cities, there was always a group of people who were still deeply engrossed in work even at night. Leo was sitting in the car with his legs crossed. One hand was on his knee, tapping impatiently, and the other was holding the phone. Don't go against your Carter. Just go along with what he says. The voice on the other end of the phone was old but still full of energy. Maybe it was really due to his age. Alexander had recently liked to play the peacemaker. Leo said patiently, I've already given him enough face. Alexander was displeased. Then when he came to see you last time, why did you make him leave in a huff? Leo said, do you know what he came for? He wanted me to develop mobile phones with him. He's a seller of AA batteries and he wants to sell new type mobile phones. I just said it was a fantasy. And he slammed the door and left by himself. You know, Shreksan has been having a hard time recently. Your Carter is also anxious and wants to find another way out. Leo snorted. One has to see if they have the ability to find a way out. Does he think mobile phones use AA batteries? Alexander couldn't stand his youngest son's sarcasm either and said, anyway, don't provoke him. After all, he's your elder. If you don't give him face next time, I won't be lenient with you either. Leo's eyes darkened, and his tone turned unfriendly. He said in a deep voice, I don't have such an elder who molests my secretary. Alexander was used to being a leader and didn't allow others to disobey him, even his own son. And Leo's personality was also hard to describe. The two of them often got on each other's nerves when talking. After all, he was his own father. Leo endured listening to Alexander's criticism before finally hanging up the phone. He threw the phone aside, leaned back on the seat, and raised his hand to rub the space between his eyebrows. The car had reached a fork in the road, and the driver asked, Mr. Leo, shall we go directly back to Yunting Mansion? Yunting Mansion was where Leo lived. He didn't want to go back now, so he told the driver, go to the company. It was already late. Most of the employees who were working overtime had left. Leo didn't go back to the company because he was so fond of work. Instead, the argument with his father had made him a bit annoyed. He had a cleanliness obsession and didn't want to go anywhere else when he was annoyed. He came to the company to handle official business and distract himself. He knew that Lucas would ensure that the office was cleaned very neatly. In terms of work, Lucas was actually very serious and responsible. He was also quite smart and understood everything after a little guidance. He was very easy to work with. Leo could only pick on some minor faults if he wanted to make things difficult for him. It was just that he had too many petty emotions. It was okay for him to have petty emotions, but he even voiced them. And it was even worse that Leo had heard them. Leo stopped himself from continuing to recall what had happened in the restaurant to prevent himself from torturing Lucas tomorrow. The company was completely silent late at night. All the assistants and secretaries in the president's office had gone off work. The security guards had turned off all the other lights and only left the emergency lights on. The faint green light quietly spread on the corridor, presenting a strange kind of peace. His kingdom was sleeping. Leo stepped on the soft carpet and walked inside step by step. When he was about to reach the office door, he suddenly heard a faint sound. The low sobs mixed with the ethereal murmurs drifted in the silent night and gently hit people's ears, making one's spine tingle. Leo stopped and frowned. The sound was so strange, rustling and mixed with human voices. When one listened carefully, one couldn't make out what was being said. It could even be said to be a bit terrifying in the quiet night. If someone had a small appetite for fear, they would have been so scared that their souls would have flown away and run off long ago. Naturally, Leo wasn't a coward. He didn't like his floor being in a mess. He looked around to see who was pretending to be a ghost. Leo stood there, trying to determine the source of the sound. Finally, his gaze landed on the secretary's desk at the office door. That desk was usually reserved for Lucas to receive visitors and handle affairs. The desktop was tidied up neatly and spotlessly clean. The folders were neatly organized on one side, and there was a bunch of dried flowers beside the computer screen, emitting a faint fragrance. A glass door separated the secretary's desk, the president's office from the workstations outside, and Henry's special assistant's office was on the side of Leo's office. This entire floor was called the president's office. There were more than a dozen assistants and secretaries working inside, but only the world behind the glass door was the core of Shearway. At this time, Leo was standing at the glass door, staring at Lucas's desk. The automatic door sensed someone at the entrance and opened automatically. When Lucas left, he usually locked this glass door. Now that the door was open, it meant there was someone inside. The moment the glass door opened, those strange sounds became clearer. Leo heard a vague "go to hell," and then a puff of alcohol fumes hit him. Leo raised his eyebrows. Although the sound of opening the door was faint, it was infinitely amplified in the quiet night, and the previous sounds stopped. Leo walked inside following his memory and stopped beside the secretary's desk. The sound came from here. He put his fingers on the desktop and tapped it as a warning. There was complete silence. The person making the sound backed down and didn't dare to play tricks anymore. Leo moved forward and walked behind the desk. First, he saw a foot in a leather shoe quickly retract inside, and then there were beer cans all over the floor, lying haphazardly on the carpet behind the secretary's desk. Leo frowned and quickened his pace, directly going around to the back. Lucas was sitting on the carpet with his back against the desk. He looked up blankly and stared at Leo. He was still wearing the suit he wore for work during the day, but it was a bit wrinkled. There were beer cans all around his feet, and there were also a few bags of snacks scattered messily beside them. The mess made Leo's anger flare up. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Lucas' expression and closed his mouth. The main lights on the floor had already been turned off, but the emergency lights were still on, and the neon lights of the big city were also shining. The light shone in through the large, area glass windows, illuminating everything clearly. Leo saw a glistening light under Lucas' eyes. Lucas was stunned when he saw Leo appear. He lowered his head in a hurry, rubbed his eyes, and sniffed as he said, "Mr. Leo, why have you come?" He tried to stand up, but because he had been sitting in an improper position for too long, his legs went numb. After struggling for a moment, he actually fell back down again. He even knocked down more beer cans, and the cans clashed together, making a rattling sound. Lucas was a bit annoyed. Since he couldn't stand up, he could only reach out to clean up the trash on the carpet. Leo continued to approach and sat directly on the chair beside the table. That chair was usually used by Lucas. At this moment, the president sat casually with the hem of his overcoat hanging on both sides of the chair, looking lazy and relaxed. Leo's first words were, "A grown-up man still cries. Couldn't he be given a little face?" Lucas wished he could die when he was caught by Leo drowning his sorrows in alcohol in the middle of the night. Originally, he wanted to buy some wine and take it home to drink, but then he remembered that there was still work to be done, so he came back to the office. By the time he finished, there was no one on the whole floor. He felt so tired that he didn't want to move, so he just sat directly on the carpet and started drinking. As for why his eyes were red, it was the physiological tears from drinking too much. Lucas wiped the area around his eyes with his palm and said, "I'm not crying." Leo didn't let him off and asked, "Then what are you doing?" Lucas couldn't stand up and was caught by Leo. Alcohol had filled his body and mind. He simply decided to let things go to the dogs. He stretched out his long legs, leaned back, picked up a can of beer and gulped it down, shouting, "I'm drinking, Mr. President." Leo looked at him strangely. Lucas held up the beer can, brought it in front of Leo, and invited him, "Do you want to drink with me?" Leo moved away in disgust. There was a stench of alcohol. Seeing that Leo didn't take the can, Lucas didn't care and continued to drink on his own, saying, "I have a really good capacity for alcohol. Is this considered good?" Leo sat in the chair, tapping his fingers on the armrest, and continued with the previous question, "Why were you crying?" Lucas said impatiently, "I've already said I wasn't crying. I would never cry over that scumbag." Leo understood. Henry was right. Secretary Lucas was heartbroken. His boyfriend was an associate professor at S-City University. Leo realized, "So you were dumped." Lucas got angry upon hearing this. He shifted his book closer to Leo. There was a fire in his bright eyes. He stared at Leo and said, "No way. I dumped him. That guy is such a jerk. I don't want him anymore. Let him pair up with another jerk. There are only a few messy things in a relationship." Leo immediately guessed what had happened. A feeling of displeasure welled up in his heart. It wasn't out of sympathy for Lucas but out of dissatisfaction. The employees in their company are all excellent, yet there's someone who cheats. It's simply unforgivable. Leo said, he's really a jerk. It's good riddance. Lucas was drinking and heard this. He gave a silly smile and said, hazardous waste cannot be recycled. Leo raised his eyebrows and looked at Lucas. Lucas sat there with his head down, drinking. The outside light shone on his face, outlining distinct light and shadow. There were glistening droplets on his eyelashes, like bright stars. He was quite pitiful. Is that so? Called Associate Professor Blind? How could he bear to hurt such a beautiful person? Leo encouraged him, well done. Lucas was happy because of this. He sat on the carpet at Leo's feet and said, you praised me, Mr. Leo. I'm so happy. Leo was a bit surprised and began to wonder if the reward mechanism usually was not good enough. A simple well done made Lucas so happy. You never praise me usually? Lucas lowered his head and groped around, saying, now that you've praised me, can my suspended sentence be changed to an acquittal? Leo thought about what suspended sentence and acquittal meant. After understanding, he almost laughed out of anger. He kept a straight face and said, no, it's not that easy. His temples were still throbbing from time to time. There was no way Lucas could get away with it by pretending to be drunk. Lucas pouted and pitifully held up a pack of snacks, then handed it to Leo and said, Mr. Leo, have some peanuts. Don't be angry.